It is Rivals.com National Signing Day coverage as we continue here with a look at the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And of course, to help us out, we'll bring in national recruiting analyst Greg Smith to do the honors. Greg, obviously quite familiar with what Nebraska has been able to do. And on National Signing Day, they had a couple of key recruits.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting. Matt Rule continues to find ways to add people to this class as you're up close to 30 recruits now in the class, and they're finding interesting ways, right? Is you land Keona Wilhite out of California, the four-star defensive end. If he was an interesting situation in himself, leaving that Washington class after Kalen DeBoer left Washington to take the job at Alabama, he opens things up, considers a couple other schools, including UCLA. You hear the rumors with Chip Kelly potentially going to the NFL to be an offensive coordinator, and Nebraska thought they were kind of out of this one until those rumors started up, right? And then they end up landing Will High, will be a good piece on that defense, whereas that defensive line under Terrence Knight at Nebraska continues to do good work, and they played well with what they had last year, and they continue to add pieces. And then they had defensive back Kahmir Prescott out of Philadelphia, another intriguing athlete on the back end for a team that continues to collect these guys in that defensive back room. It's interesting. Fans always kind of get a little nervous about seeing so many defensive backs. You kind of caution people that they do run a 3-3-5, so they've got five of them out there at one time, and they do like to cross-train guys and get guys, bulked up and move them down a level as well. And he's another guy that fits right into that mold with some of those other guys that they have in defensive back that are versatile chess pieces that can move all around.
So with the signing day splashes, Nebraska, like you said, close to 30 verbal commitments. That class is going to be ranked closer to the top 15 than the top 25. They finished number 25 last cycle. So obviously upward trajectory for the program. But when you zoom out beyond signing day, of course, we got to go back to Dylan Rola. That land in December. How do you look at it now that time has gone by? He's played in the Polynesian Bowl. He's enrolled. All of that is signed, sealed, and delivered. How do you look back at that as a catalyst for not only the overall class, but the finish here?
It has now become kind of the key to the Matt Rule era, and it's just another log on the fire of the expectations that are going to be placed upon Dylan Raiola, like right or wrong, like the weight of the world is on his shoulders right now. It would be enough if you were just a five-star quarterback coming to a program that has been struggling, that doesn't land a lot of five-star players anyway in general. That would be enough. But your dad's name being in the Ring of Honor inside of the stadium adds another layer of pressure to that. Your uncle being on the staff as the offensive line coach adds more to that. You look up at basketball games here recently, and Dylan Raiola is sitting courtside with Trev Alberts, the athletic director. Like it's a lot that is happening there. It'll be fascinating to see how it unfolds. But he is the catalyst, I think, to what they're going to do moving forward. It helped them to kind of jumpstart the end to that class, and they finished strong, as we saw today again with a couple of additional pieces. They added guys in the transfer portal, especially on the offensive side of the football, at skill position players at running back and wide receiver, and he was directly tied to that. It'll be fun to see what Nebraska does in the 2025 cycle when he's also there and helping them recruit as well, and then see how he plays. And that's a whole nother thing, right? Like it's going to be one of the more interesting storylines moving forward in college football on how he adjusts to kind of go into the next level as a kid that has all the tools in the world on the field, but all the expectations in the world coming to him from off of the field.
Yeah, plenty to be said for a guy who's probably on the early stages of learning the playbook itself. But I guess
Right.
we'll get to all that other stuff in the right time. Zooming out again to the whole class here, Greg. Again, we talked about that upward trajectory for the Cornhuskers and the ability to recruit nationally. On top of that, you mentioned signing day additions from the West Coast and the East Coast. I'm going to
Yeah.
take it down to Florida. There's a heavy Nebraska vibe in South Florida, in particular Miami-Dade County. I think 5 prospects ended up heading up to Lincoln for college
Mhm.
football. What is it about Nebraska recruiting nationally and then hitting these key focal points geographically?
Yeah, it's been something for Nebraska through multiple coaching staffs actually to recruit down in Florida and especially in Dade County. And you go back through, Scott Frost time, Mike Riley, Bo Pelini as well. Before that, it's been years now that has always been a spot where Nebraska has tried to land talent and then see if they can get guys up here and kind of make it work. And I think that part of having success up here, going back to Bo Pelini, is finding ways to actually get that to work And then on the flip side, you see it with Scott Frost, where it did not work at all, and had a lot of guys flame out that came from down there too, right? And so I think that Matt Rule is trying to find the correct formula with those particular guys. You get a couple of legacy guys like they did in the class before, with Dwight Doodle coming from down there. You get guys in this class that have ties to the coaching staff already. Philip Simpson, who's a well-known guy down in the Miami recruiting scene as a former high school coach, he's on staff. Evan Cooper went to high school down in Florida, defensive backs coach. So there's ties there. So you hope that those things end up helping to carry things over and make those guys a little bit more comfortable moving forward. But Nebraska will continue to try to do that. And then you can't talk national recruiting with Nebraska without mentioning Texas as well, right? That's another state that they continue to recruit heavily, and they put a significant investment. And I think Matt Rule had a line where he said that he wants to make, Nebraska needs to be Texas's Big Ten team, right? And so it's definitely on purpose that they're trying to find kind of these sweet spots around the country to be able to supplement their recruiting locally as well.
Even got a Hawaiian on the commitment list. So truly
Yes.
national for the Huskers in the class of 2024. A lot of expectation, highest recruiting class in at least a half decade. So we'll see how it all pans out. Of course, the folks will have it covered for you at rivals.com. And Greg, we know you got the Midwest covered for us as well. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.